Just after turning in the final paper of the National College Entrance Exam, feeling extremely satisfied, I was stopped on the spot. The proctor held up an exam sheet in front of me, waving it. "Did you do this one?" I glanced at the paper filled with handwriting. It was definitely mine. Right at that moment, the police caught Tong Uyen, the one who was supposed to be in the exam room at a nearby cafe. Sensing trouble, Tong Uyen immediately confessed everything. She said she had spent 1 million yuan to hire me a top student who'd already secured direct admission to Tsinghua University to take the entrance exam for her. After investigation, they found the exact amount she mentioned had been transferred to my bank account. Solid evidence. No matter what I said, it was useless. Tsinghua instantly cut all ties, declaring they would never accept a morally corrupt student like me. My high school also stripped away all scholarships and support. My mother, already severely ill, died on the spot from sheer rage. In my panic, I was hit by a speeding bus on the roadside. Even up until the moment I died, I still couldn't understand how I got dragged into this identity fraud scandal. When I opened my eyes again, I was right back on the day of the college entrance exam. The shaking of the school bus jolted me from the haze. Familiar teasing voices rang in my ears. "Hey, you've already got direct admission. Why even bother squeezing in to take the test? Don't go falling asleep in the exam room." My best friend Ha Tu immediately jumped to my defense. "You guys know nothing, my girl, Lex. Lack is aiming to be the provincial top scorer, unlike you lazy slackers with no ambition." The others snorted, fiddling with their pen cases. The glaring numbers on my exam ticket snapped me fully awake. I struggled to suppress the panic rising in my chest and looked up at the electronic screen inside the bus. It was indeed the first day of the college entrance exam. In my last life, I clearly had guaranteed admission in hand. Yet I stubbornly took the exam anyway. I wanted to put a perfect full stop on my youth, and I wanted to win the 50,000 yuan provincial scholarship for the top scorer. Who could have expected? After finishing my last exam paper, what awaited me wasn't flowers and applause, but a cold, silent interrogation room. In just one night, I became a public disgrace. She already got into Qingbei, and she still took someone else's exam for money. Absolutely no conscience. She's received all those scholarships, and it still wasn't enough. Her mother dying in the hospital is just karma for that dirty money. Not everyone deserves to enter Qingbei scum, like that should be severely punished. Even now, I still don't understand. Where exactly did things go wrong? The bus began to slow down and the exam center gate appeared up ahead. My palms were drenched in cold sweat, heart pounding like it was going to burst from my chest. No, I absolutely cannot let the tragedy of my past life repeat itself. My stomach hurts. I have to get off the bus. The bus instantly exploded in chaos. "What are you doing? We're almost at the exam center, we get it. You don't take the exam seriously, but don't drag us down too." Ha Tu quickly pulled me back into my seat. Lack, hang in there, we're almost there," on how my childhood friend also tried to reason with me. "Just hold on a bit longer, we'll be there soon and you can deal with it then. The roads are crowded right now. If you're late, you won't be let in." I bit my lip hard, enduring the pain. "You guys go ahead. Don't worry about me. I can't drag everyone down because of this." The driver, annoyed, hit the brakes. I stumbled off the bus, didn't look back, and ran straight toward the curb. Only when the school bus disappeared from sight did I finally let out a sigh of relief. I pulled out my phone and, without hesitation, immediately booked a short tour. 3 days wasn't long, but it was enough to help me avoid this baseless disaster. Clutching the crumpled ticket tightly, I squeezed onto a short-distance bus heading to the outskirts. There was still a faded decal on the window reading "Cheap Suburban Tour." The plastic seats reeked of a musty, sour mold. To be able to flee this hastily, I practically emptied my wallet. Only a few coins remained. Throughout the journey, I barely rested, rushing from one tourist spot to another. Every time I arrived, I took as many check-in photos as possible. Looking at my phone's gallery growing fuller and nearing memory capacity, I finally felt a sliver of relief. By lunchtime, the bus was filled with the smell of food. I quietly chewed on a dry, hard-steamed bun, each bite tasting like bitterness being swallowed down. At night, I dragged my exhausted feet to the youth hostel I had booked. As soon as I opened the door, 8 middle-aged women were already gathered laughing, cracking sunflower seeds, making the already cramped room feel even more suffocating. I forced myself to join in playing cards, faking enthusiasm, as we chatted about family and daily life. Everything I did was to prove I had truly been present during these 3 days. If the nightmare from my past life repeated, at least these women and the photos in my phone could vouch for me. After 2 sleepless nights, my eyelids felt heavier and heavier. The moment I got on the bus, I immediately fell asleep. In a half-dreaming daze, I vaguely heard the tour guide's voice. Due to bad weather, the group would return earlier than planned. It wasn't until a blinding flashlight shone directly into my eyes that I snapped awake. The bus was now full of uniformed police officers. The lead officer curled his lips in mockery. Ha lack lack, that was quick. Just finished taking the exam for someone else and you're already trying to flee with a travel tour. I froze. My mind went blank. I never even took the college entrance exam. How could I have taken it for someone else? The officer's expression didn't change as he flipped through a folder. The sound of paper rustling was deafening in the silent bus. Stop making excuses. Even if the camera footage didn't clearly catch your face, we have enough evidence to prove you were the one who took the test. His voice was cold, like a blade soaked in ice, each word stabbing straight into my chest. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my trembling hands. I have the whole tour group as witnesses. During all 3 days of the college entrance exam, I was at tourist spots. There's no way I could have been at the test site. On instinct, I looked around seeking support, but when I clearly saw what was around me, it felt like I had fallen into a bottomless pit. All the faces were unfamiliar. The passengers had changed, not a single familiar person remained. The officer caught the flicker of panic on my face and curled his lip with a knowing smirk. Has anyone here seen this student before? The silence in the bus was so thick you could hear a pin drop. The new tourists looked at each other, puzzled. We just joined the tour. The previous group left about an hour ago. An hour, my heart pounded. I dashed toward the door in a panic, but that only made it look like I was trying to escape. I didn't even make it 2 steps before I was pinned to the ground, the cold handcuffs clamped around my wrists. I completely broke down screaming, "Let me go!" I didn't do it. Lack lack. The voices of On Hao and Ha Tu Tu rang out from afar. When On Hao saw me being pinned down, a flicker of sorrow flashed in his eyes. Can't we talk this through? Was it really necessary to get physical? The officer loosened his grip slightly, yanking me up like a baby chick. Humph. If you'd cooperated from the start, this wouldn't have happened. R22 wiped her tearless eyes in a dramatic display. Lack, they're saying you took money to sit someone's exam. What's going on? Didn't we already cover your mother's medical costs? You wouldn't destroy your entire future for money, would you? Just then, a familiar figure boarded the bus. The moment I saw her face, I shouted, overcome with emotion, "Tour guide, please tell them I was with the group these past few days, always with everyone." The gentle face of the tour guide flickered with hesitation. "Sweetie, our tours work like a chain. We swap out groups every few days. Honestly, we see dozens of people every day. How could I possibly remember who's who?" My heart instantly sank to the bottom. My ears buzzed. I could almost hear the sound of blood pulsing through my veins. Ha-Tu-Tu frowned at what I said. Lack, didn't you keep saying you'd aim for provincial valedictorian to get that 50,000 yuan scholarship? Her voice unexpectedly rose, then lowered again in a hiss. And your mum's still in the hospital. You think this is the time to go on a fun little vacation. The officer's gazes instantly sharpened like blades trying to slice right through me. Suddenly I remembered something and struggled to break free, shouting, "It's okay if you don't remember me." But I took pictures with everyone these past few days. I filmed the whole trip. Everything is on my phone. The officer holding me clearly hesitated for a moment, a flash of sympathy in his eyes. "She'll find the photos. Once we see them, we'll know the truth." But when I tore through my bag, my phone was gone. The zipper inside had somehow come undone. All that remained was half a pack of tissues and a broken lipstick. Where's my phone? At that moment, the police lost all patience. An older officer slammed his palm against a seat so hard that a water bottle from the row ahead clattered to the floor. "Bet your phone's full of proof you took the test for someone else and you didn't get rid of it the moment you left the exam hall." They yanked my backpack open, study notes scattered like snow. My exam admission card landed under someone's foot and was instantly trampled. "See this? Clearly prepped for an exam, not a vacation. Take her to the station. I want to see once we're in the interrogation room, what excuse are you going to make up next?" The lights in the interrogation room were pale and harsh, dazzling enough to make one dizzy. Tong Uyen was already there, just like in my past life. The moment she saw me, she insisted I'd taken a payment of 1 million yuan from her to sit the college entrance exam on her behalf. An officer walked in holding a thick stack of physical evidence. His eyes, sharp as blades, scanned my face coldly. "You keep claiming you're innocent. Then explain these." In the surveillance footage, I was clearly seated next to Tong Uyen, head down, writing throughout the exam. The handwriting on her test, undeniably mine. Even the tiniest quirks of my writing style matched. That's impossible. My voice trembled without me realizing. The officer slid a plastic evidence bag toward me. Inside was a long black hair collected from the exam seat. DNA analysis confirmed it was mine. The principal pushed his glasses up, his expression full of disappointment. "Ha lak lak, I know you're in need, but hasn't the school already provided scholarships and aid? Why did you have to be so greedy to do something illegal?" Professor Hua, the head of admissions from Tsinghua University, furrowed his brow. His fingers tapped the table rhythmically. "If you can't give us a clear explanation, we absolutely cannot accept a student with moral issues." "Lak lak!" a weak voice called out from the doorway. I turned sharply. It was my mother being wheeled in slowly by a nurse. Chemotherapy had withered her to skin and bone. The hospital gown hung from her like it was draped over a hanger. Her hands were covered in puncture marks from countless needles. Hearing Professor Hua's words, my mother suddenly struggled to stand. She collapsed to the floor like a dry leaf, shocking everyone. She propped herself up on her frail arms, crawling inch by inch toward Professor Hua's feet. "My daughter," her voice soaked in blood and tears trembled. "She's been waking at 4 a.m. to study for the past 4 years. She works late every night. She hasn't even bought herself a decent outfit. Now that she finally has a sliver of hope if you give up on her, then everything she's worked for will be destroyed." Tears welled up in her deeply sunken eyes, and then she dropped to her knees. "I beg you, please, don't ruin the future she risked her life to earn." Tears poured from my eyes, uncontrollable. Though we were poor, my mother had never once lowered herself to beg anyone, much less kneel like this, stripped of all dignity. Her entire body trembled, her limbs were cold as stone. I rushed forward to lift her up, but she stubbornly refused to stand. "Mum, I don't have to go to school anymore. Please don't do this." My voice cracked as if my throat were stuffed full of cotton. "It's all your fault. If not for your illness, I wouldn't have been dragged into this mess." The officer face, cold as ice, pulled out a bank transfer record and laid it in front of my mother. "Take a look. Your daughter received 1 million yuan. She ignored exam discipline and broke the law. If you didn't raise her right in the first place, what good will crying do now?" His voice was cold as a whetstone, each word stabbing into my ears like needles. Suddenly, my mother convulsed violently, coughing non-stop. Her lips turned pale, then she unexpectedly spat out a mouthful of deep red blood splattering across the pristine white paper. I didn't take the exam for her, I screamed hoarsely, clutching my mother's paper-thin body. Don't treat my mother like this! On. Hao stomped his feet anxiously. She's seriously ill. Please don't agitate her further. Hatutu sobbed, gripping my hand and kneeling beside me. Lack, things have come to this. Just admit your mistake, ask them to reduce the sentence. No matter what happens, we'll always be here for you. Before my eyes, it felt like the past was replaying all over again. The world spun, everything turned upside down. I had never imagined that even without setting foot in the exam room, someone would still do everything to push me to my death. My gaze unintentionally swept over the blood-stained transfer record in my mother's hand. A forgotten detail suddenly surfaced. If I could prove that the person in the exam room wasn't me, then there would be no reason to convict me for taking the test on someone's behalf, right? A fleeting trace of panic flashed across Hatuthu's face, something she failed to hide. Her long, slender fingers clenched tightly at her shirt. Hem, her knuckles pale from strain. Lack, I know losing your guaranteed admission was a huge blow. Her voice dropped to a whisper as if afraid to awaken something, yet it quivered deliberately. But you can't just think about yourself. Auntie's old, she's sick. Now she has to worry about all this because of you. Her voice choked at the perfect moment, clearly waiting for the reactions of those around her. On Hao stepped forward, seizing the moment Lakas admit it. We'll help plead for leniency. Maybe there's still a chance. He then turned to the officers, eyes full of pleading. Looking at the two people who once meant everything to me, all I felt was a chill rising from the soles of my feet. You two were my best friends at school. You know me better than anyone. So why are you so sure I'd sell myself for money and take someone else's exam? Hatutu flinched, struck at her weak spot, her panic deepening. Lack. Of course we know you always cared about your reputation. She reached out to grab my sleeve, but I subtly stepped away. But didn't Auntie's illness nearly drive you mad? Her voice suddenly rose just enough for everyone nearby to hear. When people fall into despair, they're capable of reckless things. We understand. We really do. On Hao looked at me with sorrow. Lack. You know how much I care about you. Even if you end up in prison, I'll take care of your mum. I'll cover her medical bills until you get out. His words moved more than a few people nearby. This boy's feelings run deep. Even though she committed a serious crime, he still won't abandon her. He's even willing to carry the burden with her. I couldn't help but remember the memories of our childhood. He once broke his arm blocking a flying ball for me sweat, soaking his forehead as he smiled through the pain in the nurse's office. He once carried me across a flooded street in a heavy downpour, soaked to the bone, but determined to get me home safely. The officers were growing impatient. One of them slammed the table. If you've got proof, hand it over. Otherwise, confess already and stop wasting everyone's time. I took a deep breath. During the college entrance exam days, I was at an ATM in the neighboring city doing a transaction. The machine required facial recognition. The entire process was recorded by the bank's surveillance system. If you retrieve that footage, you'll see clearly that the person in the exam room was not me. The officers seemed half convinced. One lowered his voice, warning, "You'd better not be playing games." The two deeply devoted friends from earlier Hatutu and On Hao now looked utterly pale with not a hint of joy that their friend was about to be cleared of wrongdoing. You? What were you doing at the bank? Hatutu's voice trembled uncontrollably. Why did you suddenly do any transactions? On Hao quickly chimed in, his voice full of panic. Faced with their flustered expressions, I let out a cold laugh and said slowly, "What if I told you I had long suspected someone would try to frame me, and intentionally went to cancel the bank account that might receive dirty money?" Would you believe that Hatutu's face turned deathly pale? Her whole body trembled as if her biggest secret had just been laid bare. "No way! This can't be. How could you? She murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. On Hao looked completely drained of strength. He collapsed to the floor, eyes hollow and lifeless. In truth, the reason I went to the bank that day was pure coincidence. While sightseeing, I passed an ATM and suddenly remembered the risky account. But when I tried to cancel it, I found the account had been registered under my mother's name. I had no authority to make changes. At the time, I didn't think much of it. After all, I had already decided not to take the university entrance exam. Even if money was transferred into the account, it couldn't be considered evidence I took the test for someone else. I never expected that this tiny action would end up saving me when it mattered most. I lightly patted Ha Tu Thu's shoulder, half teasing, half serious Tu. Even if your family has influence in the education system, surely it doesn't extend to controlling the national financial network. Right? Why, you're spouting nonsense. What does this have to do with the Ha family? I smiled coldly, then continued. Don't be so quick to deny connections. Once the police investigate thoroughly, the truth will come out. The police immediately followed the lead and extracted the ATM surveillance footage from that day. The high-definition video showed every single detail and movement. I made solid evidence that cleared every last suspicion about me. One officer's face turned white as a sheet. He lost control and grabbed me by the collar, his knuckles going pale. If you really never entered the exam room, then who the hell was sitting in your seat? I calmly brushed off his hand, the corner of my mouth curling into a cold smile. My job is to prove I'm innocent. As for what happened in that exam room, isn't that your job to investigate? Only now did law enforcement begin to understand the true severity of the situation. From exam ID distribution to security checks to invigilator assignments and exam paper transportation, pulling off a person swap amid such tightly controlled processes could never be the work of a simple impersonation scam. News that a top student with guaranteed admission to Tsinghua or Beida had been falsely accused exploded online like a bombshell. Amid public outcry, the Department of Education immediately assembled a special task force to investigate hauling every main and assistant proctor into the black room for interrogation overnight. In the midst of the storm, Ha Tu Thu requested a private meeting with me. She chose an exclusive member-only tea room in the city centre. The private room was soundproof. After serving tea and snacks, the attendants quietly left. Lack, things have spun out of control now. Did you know just yesterday more than 30 parents showed up at the Education Bureau? She suddenly grabbed my hand tightly. If you just stop pushing the case, tell the police it was all a misunderstanding. My family is willing to give you 10 million as compensation. That's enough to start over anywhere, even Harvard or the EU. What she called not pursuing was in essence having me shoulder the entire blame. The story was already scripted, I only needed to repeat it at the police station. Even if there were many unanswered questions, as long as I confessed, all the insiders in the exam operation would walk away untouched. 10 million, huh? I laughed out loud. So you really are scared. That number is far beyond what I expected. Based on the Ha family's assets, they must have scraped together every liquid fund available, which only proves if this is investigated any further, the Ha family will go down with no hope of return. Seeing that I wasn't the least bit moved, Ha Tu Thu finally lost control of her emotions. Lack. Weren't we best friends? Did you forget, back in 8th grade when your mum needed emergency surgery, who gave you all her New Year money, saved up over 3 years? I only gave a cold, mocking smile. Best friends when you schemed and went to such lengths to destroy me. Why didn't you remember we were best friends then? The colour drained from Ha Tu Thu's face. Her usually gentle almond-shaped eyes were now cloaked in a chilling coldness and cruelty. At first, I really did consider you my best friend. Her voice hissed through clenched teeth laced with long-suppressed hatred. I still remember, when you first transferred to our school, you couldn't even afford a proper uniform. I was the one who lent you my spare set. I still remember the look of gratitude in your eyes back then. It made me feel like some kind of savior. Sunlight filtered through the windows, but it couldn't dispel the icy air emanating from her. But you kept stealing the spotlight that should have been mine. From the very first monthly exam, you used that fake perfect score to rob me of the applause I deserved. Her voice rose higher, trembling with fury on the edge of madness. If it weren't for you, I would have been the top student. I would have been class president. I would have gotten the guaranteed spot at Qingbei. Your very presence made everyone turn their attention to you. The teachers praised your diligence. Our classmates looked up to you. Even the upperclassmen I'd secretly liked for 3 years started asking around for your contact info. If you hadn't insisted on taking everything from me, I wouldn't have had to resort to this to get rid of you. It was only now that I realized just how twisted she'd become from jealousy. I'd always treated her as nothing more than a genuine friend, while she had viewed me as a threat from the very beginning, calculating, scheming. I finally understood she had approached me not out of kindness, but to relish in her superiority over a poor student like me. She enjoyed the role of the generous benefactor, but the moment I started rising, the moment the one she gave to dared to shine, she couldn't stand it. She was willing to burn her entire world down just to drag me into hell with her. This world is a competition. I earned everything through my own hard work. What's wrong with that? You were born with everything. The scales were already tipped in your favor from the start. And now you have the audacity to say, I stole from you. This time, not only will I refuse to help you, I'll pursue this to the very end. I'll demand justice for myself. Hartutu expression changed instantly. She suddenly dropped to her knees. Her designer jeans were instantly stained with dust. Lak. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things to you. She slapped herself hard across the face again and again. It's my fault. I shouldn't have been jealous. Shouldn't have hurt you. The slaps were fierce. Her pale cheeks turned blotchy red. But this morning my mum was admitted to the ICU because of this scandal. You have a mother too, don't you? Can't you just consider my filial piety? Please help me just this once. Only now at the brink of ruin did she mention her mother. But in my past life, she had witnessed my mother coughing up blood over my scandal, saw her writhe in agony, and still did nothing. She had never once thought to let us off. I shook her hand off forcefully. When my mother knelt down and begged you all, did you even consider showing mercy? You didn't stand up for me then. Don't expect me to stand with you now. More and more people came to negotiate with me, some threatening, some coaxing. All of them were coldly rejected. They couldn't shake me, so they began targeting the ones I loved. That night I received an urgent call from the nurse station. Several suspicious individuals had been loitering outside my mother's hospital room. My heart nearly stopped. Thankfully, I had planned ahead. With help from the task force, we immediately transferred my mother to a secure hospital that same night. The task force arranged for plainclothes officers to be stationed around the clock, and nurses took shifts to care for my mum, ensuring her absolute safety. That day, Teacher Hua, head of admissions at Qingbei, personally visited with a fruit basket. I noticed a few new deep lines around his eyes. My dear girl, you've suffered too much. He held my hand, voice thick with emotion. Not only did he reinstate my guaranteed admission, he also arranged for a group of volunteer students from Tsinghua, Indin, and Beida to take turns visiting my mother every day, chatting with her, keeping her company. I knew this was his way of trying to make amends, of helping me focus completely on the battle still ahead. With less than 2 weeks until trial, somehow, on Hao managed to find me at the hospital. Lak. His voice was barely above a whisper with a trace of tremble. Can we talk for a moment? Please. I looked out the window. The phoenix tree leaves fluttered gently in the wind. I thought of the boy who once wiped away my tears. And finally I nodded softly. You were my first friend. And aside from my mother, the one I trusted the most. You were once the light that illuminated my youth. In my darkest days, it was you who pulled me back from the edge. But today, it's also you who joined hands with others to drag me into hell right when I was about to touch the light. The officers from the task force were thoughtful enough to arrange a private room for us, though they still stood guard at the door. Sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting scattered shadows across the floor. We stood facing each other, and yet it felt like a galaxy stretched between us. His eyes were vacant, uncertain, as though he didn't know how to begin. I broke the silence first. My voice trembling tinged with bitterness and helplessness. I always thought we were irreplaceable in each other's lives. Only now do I realize how naive I was. At that, his lips parted as if to argue, no, it's not like that. To me, you've always been the most important person. His voice was filled with sincerity and longing. Everything I ever did for you, it all came from the bottom of my heart. I couldn't hold back a laugh, but it was a laugh full of bitterness and disappointment. Then why did you do it? Why did you hurt me? Was it just to curry favor with the daughter of the department head, or was it just for money and benefits? My eyes were bloodshot as I glared at him, each question cutting like a knife soaked in despair and fury. He gave a bitter laugh, something confused and complicated, flickering in his gaze. So, you already figured it all out. We had written letters to each other for 12 years. Anyone could imitate handwriting, but the unconscious habits in every stroke, only he could replicate them perfectly. If I said, everything I did it all for you, would you believe me? I stared at him, my eyes cold, filled with doubt and heartbreak. He looked as if something invisible had crushed him. He didn't even dare to meet my gaze, only hung his head lower, as though every glance added to his shame. On how, even now? Are you still trying to lie to me? My voice was heavy with both anger and exhaustion. Each word landed like a hammer on his already fragile conscience. He shook his head weakly, torn by regret and inner torment. Lack, I didn't want anything from this. I was just so afraid of losing you. His voice dropped trembling as he confessed his deepest fear. Ever since high school started, you soared ahead like an eagle growing wings, while I stayed behind. There was a hint of bitterness as he spoke, as if reliving the painful stretch of time when he couldn't catch up. I tried. Every night I studied until late, just so I could stay close to you even by a step. But then you got guaranteed admission to Qingbei, and my mock exam scores barely made the cut for any university. If you really went to Qingbei, you'd have a brilliant future ahead. So many opportunities waiting for you there. His voice cracked barely above a whisper. And I would lose you forever. I was stunned, and all I could do was laugh through the tears in my throat. So to keep me by your side, you didn't hesitate to ruin my future, even if it meant sending me to prison. He sighed deeply, defeated. You don't understand. From the moment I first met you, I liked you. When I started planning this, I'd already made peace with it. No matter how bad your future turned out, I would stay by your side. I'd be your only support, your only savior. He gripped my hand unconsciously, squeezing it so tightly that his knuckles turned white. I pulled my hand away. My voice was calm, but ice cold. On how, that feeling you call love, it's terrifying. It's nothing more than a twisted obsession, a suffocating net that's been strangling me. Don't call it love, it's nothing but possession. I stared straight into his eyes, my gaze resolute. If you came here today just to beg me for mercy, then don't bother. This time, no matter what, I will get justice for myself. A flicker of emotion crossed his eyes, pain, perhaps, or regret. I told you all of this because I truly regret it, he murmured. Since the day you found out the truth and started pulling away, I've had countless sleepless nights. I kept wondering if I'd never gotten involved in this, if you had made it into Qingbei, and I had only gotten into a regular university in the same city, would we have had a future? His voice trembled with yearning, but it was far too late. A gust of memory swept through my mind, carrying me back to the first day I met on How. Back then, he was like the radiant spring sun, exuding an irresistible energy, confident, strong, full of life. The way he looked at me always carried a bottomless warmth. It was that very gaze that pierced through the calluses life had built around my heart, and for the first time, I felt the world could be gentle. He was the first person who didn't hesitate to step forward and offer me all the good things he had. At that time, my life was steeped in hardship. My mother was seriously ill. Every day I buried myself in schoolwork and ran endlessly between home and hospital. Even the little time I had left, I spent watching someone else's shop to earn a few coins for living expenses. My life was like a tattered boat adrift in stormy seas, desperately patched just to stay afloat. And then On How appeared. He walked into my life like a streak of light, bringing colour, bringing hope. He listened to my sorrows, shared my burdens, and made me feel for the first time like I could lean on someone. I had grown used to living as a solitary figure, but because of him, I dared to dream about a future where we'd walk side by side. Even though I was full of gratitude and affection, I never had the courage to say it aloud. I was afraid of dragging him down, of becoming a burden. So I kept my feelings hidden deep within. My diary was filled with pages about him, every little moment between us recorded meticulously. His name was like a star shining in every line, every sheet. The little trinkets he'd hand to me, I stored each one carefully in a tin box inside my drawer, as though they were the most precious keepsakes in the world. The day I received my guaranteed admission to Qingbei, I sobbed tears of joy. I thought, at last I was worthy of standing beside him. I even planned to muster all my courage and confess on graduation day. But how ironic it turned out, he never wanted to walk that path with me. He only wanted to keep me in the mud forever so that he could always play the hero in my life. A relationship like that was never fair to begin with. How could it lead anywhere when I finally understood everything? All the love I had buried inside turned to ice. The feelings I once treasured became like a seed buried too deep in the damp earth, never to sprout again. I looked at him one last time, my eyes full of finality and quiet disappointment. From the moment you chose to hurt me, we had no future. I turned and walked away, leaving On How kneeling alone in the room, covering his face as he broke down in sobs. Following the thread of the exam fraud case, the police unravelled layer after layer, peeling it back like an onion. One by one, the hidden clues from the 3 days of national exams came to light. It was like a dense fog slowly lifting. At a critical moment, the facial recognition system conveniently malfunctioned. It should have been the final line of defense to ensure fairness, but the proctor didn't thoroughly verify the candidate's identity. Even more shocking, that very proctor was Hatutu's biological aunt. That close relationship had clearly been the golden key that let them bypass every security protocol. With that help, Hatutu easily found a female student who resembled me and had her impersonate me in the exam hall. The proxy test-taking went off without a hitch. The girl pretending to be me was a temporary stand-in, but the test papers, they were written by On How himself, who had deliberately mimicked my handwriting. At the solemn trial, perhaps out of guilt, On How eventually chose to come clean. He confessed his role in the scheme in full detail, allowing the trial to proceed smoothly. Hatutu parents, the masterminds behind the entire plan, were stripped of their positions in an instant and are now facing harsh legal consequences. As for Hatutu and On How, they lost not only their futures, but also their freedom, paying for it with years behind bars. I think back on the past, there was a time I envied Hatutu. Her mother was a high-ranking official, gave birth to her at 40, an only child in a privileged family. From a young age, she lived a life of indulgence, getting whatever she wanted, doing whatever she pleased. As for me, I was like a little bird trapped in a cage. I couldn't even find a moment to breathe for myself. But who would have thought that very indulgence she grew up with? was what pushed her down the path of self-destruction. When On Hao was being escorted past me by the police, he lowered his head slightly. His voice trembled as he whispered, "I'm sorry." It was so quiet, barely audible, but it landed in my chest like a hammer blow. Still, both of us knew everything. It was beyond saving, and this meeting was probably the last we'd ever have in this lifetime. In the end, I walked through the gates of my dream university with nothing but my own strength. My mother's health began to show signs of improvement, and slowly, I could feel the weight on my shoulders begin to lighten. Life, little by little, was shifting towards something brighter. I began to learn how to cherish myself, how to love myself, and eventually, how to love others. At university, I experienced my first real relationship. We loved each other with sincerity. Neither of us was trying to save the other, neither of us had to sacrifice ourselves. And there was no need for anyone to reach out and rescue the other in the middle of a storm. True love is like a gentle ray of sunshine, quietly appearing at the most beautiful moment in life. It doesn't change everything, but it makes a life already worth living shine a little brighter.